And he said to Steve, "Where are we?" And Steve looked at him and said, "We're in Cheyenne, Wyoming." Now, the guy in the ditch didn't know why, but he immediately felt like Wyoming had to be wrong. Like, there's no way he could be in Wyoming. But the guy in the ditch didn't know where he was supposed to be. He didn't know who Steve was. He didn't know who Pat, Joel, or Chris was. And so it's all totally confusing. And so he just stood there kind of saying nothing. And as he did, Steve said, "Hold on a minute, I'm going to get my stuff." And so Steve kind of shuffled down the road like 10, 20 feet away, where there was a shopping cart full of cans, and there was a backpack and some other things dangling off the side. And as Steve grabbed the shopping cart, turned it around, and slowly began pushing it back towards the guy in the ditch, the guy in the ditch stared at Steve and kind of put together that, Steve must be homeless. And this realization made the guy in the ditch think that, maybe he was homeless too. And so suddenly, instinctively, the guy from the ditch began reaching into his pockets, thinking maybe he had an ID or something that would show him who he was, that would show he was not homeless, that he had a place that he needed to go to. And he reached in his pockets, but there was nothing. All he found was 23 cents and a comb. And so by the time Steve came over with his cart and asked the guy from the ditch, "Hey, do you want to come to the shelter with me?" the guy from the ditch was like, "Okay, yeah, I'll go with you." And then once the guy from the ditch and Steve arrived at the shelter, when they went inside, the guy from the ditch had to introduce himself to the people who ran the shelter. And so he made up a name combining one of those names that was running through his head, Pat, with the color of the desk of the person who was asking him for his name inside of the shelter. And so he just called himself Pat Brown. And after Pat Brown got a room inside of the shelter, he went to bed that night, still having no idea what was going on, but he felt confident, if I just sleep tonight, I'll wake up tomorrow and I'll know what's going on. I'll figure out, what happened to me. But the next day when Pat woke up, he was still completely confused, did not know who he was, had no idea what was going on, but he had the wherewithal to know that, something bad must have happened to him, and maybe he should go talk to the police, because maybe they would know if other people were looking for him or something.